Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Craftsman Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Smith, the author and founder of Craftsman Creative, and my guest today is George Sisneros. George is someone that I met on Twitter and have been following for about a year. I think at the time I started following George, he had maybe 1,000, 2,000 followers. Today he has over 55,000, only about 12 or 14 months later. He is a force to be reckoned with. His Twitter, I love his bio. He says, I tweet about the stuff your dad should have told you when you were younger. And he's great. He's an inspiration to many. I've worked with him and on how to grow my Twitter, and he is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited that we had this opportunity to chat in this episode. George has a new book out called Do You Love Me, which we talk about the process of writing and even coming up with the idea for that book. What was the reason behind it and how did he go about writing it over the last few years? And then we kind of took a diversion into talking about growth and audience and the many things that having an audience and building an audience affords you as a creator. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. Now, if you haven't yet, head over to craftsmancreative.co. Right at the top, there is an email form. You can put in your email address for free, and I will send you a 5-day email series about how to navigate the creator economy. It's what I'm passionate about, and it's what I help people do each and every day as a creator, and I hope that I can help you as well. So head over to craftsmancreative.co, enter your email, and I will see you in your inbox soon. Now, on to the episode. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Craftsman Creative Podcast. I'm so excited today to be talking with my friend George Sisneros. We've been friends online for a year or so, but we just recently have had more opportunities to chat and to connect. And with him launching a new book, it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to get him on a podcast, have a conversation about how he wrote it, why he wrote it, and how, what's coming of it now that it's out in the world. So George, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for being here.
Oh man, thank you. I'm excited.
Me too. So why don't we dive in first of all, so this book, I read a little bit of it. You sent me an advanced copy, so thank you for that. And it seems like it's really a compilation of a bunch of different journal entries and stories and things like that over a decade, over the last 10 years of your life, which seems like you've lived a lot in the last 10 years. So I'd love to dive in first on where did the idea for this book come from and how did you start putting it together? Were you writing it for 10 years or did it recently come to you? How did this all come together?
Man, that is such a good question because I really haven't thought about how this has all kind of come together, but it's been very recent, first of all. The stories are over 10 years, and those stories came from us sending newsletters out monthly or every couple of weeks. And so we had already been writing this. And listen, if I can say something to people who are listening right now, that is if you're a creator, make sure you're writing as part of your creative process. Because when we were sending these newsletters out with these stories, and as I was getting to be a better story writer, I never thought that we would be eventually publishing a book. It just wasn't in my mind. It was really just a way to communicate with people who were supporting us here in Guatemala. We're full-time missionaries. And that's kind of how the stories came together. They were partly journal entries that I never sent out as newsletters, and then others were just newsletters. And of course, as we put them all together, we had to go through an entire editing process. And I mean, I'm at the tail end of that. The book's been edited, it's been formatted, and the Kindle copy is ready to go, and it launches in 2 weeks. So that's kind of how we came to the point of that's how we wrote it all. But it was really honestly just writing, not every day, but regularly, a couple times a week.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what was the size of that audience? Was it friends and family and you were just kind of giving updates from your missionary work, or was it an audience of people that you were actively courting and marketing to and trying to grow that list? Tell me a little bit more about that aspect.
So the reality is that in the beginning, it was family and friends and people who were already supporting us as full-time missionaries. So as full-time missionaries, we don't have a church that is paying for us to be here or anything like that. It's literally just a bunch of people who believe in what we're doing here and supporting us. And so it was just an update to say, hey, you're part of this. This is what's going on. And I think we started out with a couple hundred emails in the beginning, and we grew to, I don't know, over 1,000. At some point, we whittled the list down, and I think we're now down to about 850. So that was the audience that I was writing to. But interestingly, before we became missionaries, I was looking for this book exactly. I was looking for a book of a missionary from today, and what did that life look like? And interestingly, like there are a lot of books about missionaries. Turn my phone off here. This is nice live. But there are a lot of stories from missionaries that are, from 25 or 50 or 100 years ago, but there's just I didn't find any stories from missionaries from today. And so it's just kind of funny that 10 years later, I'm publishing the book that I was looking for, before we got onto the field. So that was who the book was written to, with them in mind.
It's amazing. And being someone who served a 2-year mission for my church, like I know what that life is like, committing your entire life or a big chunk of your life to service and to proselyting and things like that. And yeah, how great would it have been at that moment to have documentation of like, here's some of the stuff you're going to be faced with, and here's how to get over adversity, and here's the names people are going to call you, and all the things that you're going to deal with. To have guidance like that from someone who's either currently going through it or just recently would have been important. But I also think that approach is such an important thing for people who want to be writing. A lot of times we think we have to be experts or have certain accolades or certain credentials in order to write a book. We have to be an expert. We have to be the number one in that category in order to write a book. And it's just flat out not true. And what I love, and the reason I asked about your email list, is because I also think a lot of creators think you have to have a massive audience to write a book, to sell a book, to put a book out into the world. And that's also not true. Like, I've recently released a book and have just under 2,000 email subscribers and Twitter followers. Like, my audience isn't massive, but a book is such a potentially transformational thing for not just the reader, but also the writer. So I'm curious if you have anything to comment on with those two ideas, but also like over that decade of writing, what are some of the takeaways or some of the changes that you experienced in your own life, the way that you thought about things, the way that you captured stories or moments? I'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, I think to the first point of needing, a certain size of an audience, we never were going to write a book. And so we just never thought about it. First of all, I think that it is, if you have an audience, that's a benefit. If you have, a bigger audience, that's better, in my opinion. So you definitely, the more, the better. But there's a famous, I don't even know what you want to call it, PDF, I can't remember the author, but it's called 1,000 True Fans or something like that. A lot of people have heard of that.
Yeah,
and the reality
Kelly.
is, you really only need 1,000 people who believe in what you're doing, and really, that's what we had. That list of 1,800, right now it's 850, that's all we needed. We've raised millions of dollars, like over $2 million, to do the things that we've done here in Guatemala, with 850 people on a list. That's crazy town. So I think that when you're writing a book, if it depends on why you're writing the book. So if you're writing a how-to and it's very niche and very specific, then you don't need a big audience. You just need a good sized audience that really cares about that thing or about that subject. If you're writing something, if you want it to be a bestseller, like a New York Times bestseller or something like that, then you're going to have a big audience, most likely. When publishers talk to authors, they ask how big is your email list and how big is your social media and how active are they? Like, that's what they're looking for. because they're going to rely on you doing a lot of the marketing. So as far as changes over the last 10 years, because I was so consistent in writing, especially over the last 2 years, my writings just got significantly better. And I could really tell as I was going back in time and looking at some of these older stories and seeing, some of the writing, I had to go in and edit a lot of just the way I wrote things and said things on some of those earlier stories. So you can definitely see a transformation in my writing. In the beginning, I wrote more maybe academically. And what I mean by that is like the things that I had learned in high school. And but then as time went, I started writing more kind of a natural way of writing, like I speak. So I write more now how I speak, which is probably because I started writing more online on Twitter. And that taught me that there are no rules. You're trying to get a point across, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to have punctuation at all if you don't want. And you can start a sentence with and you can do whatever you want as long as it, gets the message across.
Yeah. So I'd love to know about why you wrote your book. So as you're thinking about that for a second, I think it's one of my takeaways is as you were writing for an audience of people for 10 years, and then you went through and pulled the writing. You didn't have to write anything new necessarily to have a book out of it. And I think a lot of bloggers, especially people who are writing consistently, whether it's a blog a week or a couple times a week or a newsletter once a week or just an email once a month or whatever it might be, if you do that for 2, 5, 10 years, you have enough content for a book. And so it's not this Herculean task that you're facing. It's literally just shifting your mindset a little into like, oh, what have I already written that's valuable for an audience that I want to serve? But I'd love to know why do a book now? What was your reason in like deciding to go through all of the work of compiling, editing, rewriting, re-editing, and rewriting again, all of the stuff you've written over the last 10 years? What's the goal? Like, why do a book now?
Wow. Well, so it's crazy because I've been building a Twitter audience for the last year and a half, not quite year and a half. And as you build a Twitter audience, when your audience gets big enough, so for me, when I hit 8,000, something shifted. All of a sudden, people were really commenting on the way I wrote and appreciating the things I was writing. And then when you hit 20,000 and then 30 and then 40 and then 50, and it just every level that you kind of tick off, people, there's just more and more opportunities to create other streams of income. And it is honestly, man, Twitter, people have no idea the power and value behind Twitter. And so I started monetizing. I started coaching, which I still do, except that now instead of coaching 10 people, I coach 3 to 5 people, so that I can give them the proper attention, and also because my time's more valuable now. But I guess it was a year and a half ago. I don't even know. It was January, not of this year, so I guess a year and a half ago. I joined a group on Twitter it's a cohort called Ship 30 for 30. And it was basically writing every day, 250 words for 30 days. And I never had that habit. Even with our newsletter, I would write once or twice a week. And of course, when you're writing once or twice a week, sometimes you don't write that week. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I paid $100. It was the first time. It's now like $500 or $600 or $700. But I paid $100, and basically it was accountability. I ended up writing for 90 days straight, and that really gave me the ability to be consistent, and that really helped in growing my page. So that was kind of the first step, was Ship 30 for 30, growing Twitter, and then realizing what Ship 30 for 30 had done. They now have cohorts of, I don't even know how many people, 500 to 700 people that are joining the cohort every time they have it. And I think they have it maybe monthly or every other month. and they're each paying $500. So if you do the math, and again, it might even be more than that. So 500 times, say 500, that's a lot of money. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I want to be a part of that. So I'm actually launching a cohort in August, and the cohort is going to be how to write and publish your book in 60 days. Because people think it has to take so long, and it doesn't. There's definitely shortcuts and ways to get it done quicker, and I want to share that with people. I want to help them do that. And so that is what I realize is, okay, if I want to do that, if I want to have the authority and the ability to say that, I want to publish a book, obviously. So that was the big push behind it. I'm like, wait a minute, I already have all this content. I wrote it. I've just been writing it over 10 years. And so I just put it all together, packaged it, and of course, edited and formatted and all that stuff. And that was the original purpose of writing the book. Now that the book is done, to get my faith as a Christian out into the world is like another level. It's almost like the hidden reason that I didn't even know about. It's just amazing how it's impacting people already, just, with the copies that we've already sent out. So that was kind of the original idea and why I started putting the book together, but it has gradually changed. So
that's so cool to hear, because it's nice to see that those two things can exist simultaneously in the same space from the same project, that you can have an impact, that you can get a message out into the world, and that you can share your story, but also turn it into a money-making endeavor. It's a project that's going to bring in significant revenue. And I think because you approached it that way, it almost because I've probably been following you for most of that year and a half that you've been growing on Twitter. And I can really see different times where you made conscious shifts from, okay, now I'm talking about this. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm incorporating this strategy. Now I'm getting coaching. Now I'm working with these people, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost like it's been building towards this, but you had a really solid plan that you almost reverse engineered from like, oh, I want to write a book someday, or I want to do a cohort someday, or I want to figure out how to monetize this. You worked your way backwards, and now you're up over 55,000 followers, I think, at the time we're recording this. And that's such a massive platform to have built in 14 or 18 months, right? So I'd love to know if I'm like accurate in my assessment of that. Like, were you very consciously reverse engineering it and then strategically growing for that purpose, or did you have a different approach there?
At the point that I realized I wanted to do a cohort, I started to pay more attention to my growth and really work on the things that I knew that worked. So that was for sure. The second thing is I knew that if I wanted to do this cohort, and I am like balls out serious about this thing. And I told my son recently, who's kind of my partner in this, and I told him, I said, I'm going to die on this mountain. Like this is going to happen because and I'll tell you why, because I'm so incredibly passionate about this particular project. I want to help other people get their story out into the world. And I think I can do that. So I always think about that. This was kind of one of my original thoughts about this cohort. And it was this, I would ask people, what do you know about your great grandfather? And they're like, I don't even know his name, a lot of people, or I don't know almost anything. Well, what do you know about your grandfather? Well, I know his name and I know a few things here and there, but the reality is they really didn't know much about their grandparents or their great grandparents. And I thought, how cool would it be for someone to like be cleaning out an attic and find a book about their life? So that's what I'm passionate about, is I want to help people document their life. So ideally the people I'm going to be working with are going to be maybe in their mid 40s to 70, mid 60s. And they have lived a life, and I want to help them document that for their family, for their great grandkids. Because how cool, dude, just think about it, Darren. If you had a book that talked about your great grandfather, for 10 years of his life in another country, I mean, how crazy, mind blowing would that be? So so then I realized, okay, well, I definitely have to, I reached out to actually an influencer at the time, a guy I knew, about doing this with me. And he says, yeah, I'm interested, but I'm really busy right now. At the time he had, I don't remember how many he had. I want to say he had 25,000 followers and I had like 5,000. I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll come back to you once I have published my book and I'm at 15,000 followers. But the thing is, by the time I was at 15,000 followers and I had already started about putting this book together, I'm like, I don't need that person to partner with me. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because this thing is going to be just crazy massive. So wrote the book, but also along the way, I realized, there's some other things that I'm going to do to try to just build authority. Another thing is, as soon as this book is launched, after the week of launch, I'm going to start preparing and getting ready for a TED Talk, a TEDx, and I'm just going to work hard on getting a TEDx, because I just feel like people will want to join a cohort about writing a book if they've spoken at TEDx and if they've published a book. I'm also right now in the middle of marketing this book. I'm not trying to just market the book, because that's actually pretty easy to market a book on Amazon or other places. But I'm really working hard to make sure that it's a national bestseller, but potentially an international bestseller. And it can be an international bestseller because I have so many contacts across the world with, on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got so many people who were just like, they would do anything for me, that live across the globe. And I say that, what I mean by that is, like, these are friends that I've grown up with over the last year and a half, that we all just kind of help each other out. So does that make sense?
It does, but it makes me think, because you mentioned something that, like, the audience for your cohort or the people you're trying to target with this is like the 40 to 70-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of them on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what other strategies are you incorporating here to make sure that you're not just hitting people like myself who are already authors, who follow you on Twitter, who kind of get it, and those who like need your cohort and need to understand the importance of sharing their story through a book like this?
Yep.
How are you planning to reach them? Is it really just through partnerships and through other influencers, or what's the other strategy aspects there?
No, dude, you're so smart. You clearly, what you're talking about, because that's a very important question, and one that at some point I realized, wait a minute, my audience is, the Twitter audience is not necessarily going to be, the best audience. For example, I have 55,000 followers, but out of those 55,000, I don't know, maybe there's 5,000 in that age group or 10,000 in that age group. And so it's not going to be very high for what I want to do. And so I started building an audience on LinkedIn recently, and working with my son, who knows all kinds of direct email marketing tactics that will be able to scrape LinkedIn and find people who are CEOs, people who've been around a while, and directly target thousands and thousands of them that will be able to target them. On top of that, my next book, as soon as this book is done launching, I'm going to start putting my next book together, which is Everything Your Dad Should Have Said But Didn't, which is kind of the theme of my Twitter page. And I'm literally going to take my top performing threads, my top performing tweets. I don't even know how many, I've written thousands of tweets, pull out the best stuff, put it into a book, and sell it that way. Because I get so many people who are, just grateful for the threads that I've written, that I think that'll be a good book too. Well, I don't know that it'll be a bestseller necessarily, but I think someone did that. They took Naval's tweets and they put it into a book. Naval didn't, but
yeah, Eric Jorgensen did and called it the Navalmanac.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a good book, but yeah,
yeah.
he didn't do any really extra writing. It was just compiling it all.
Yeah. So that's my right now. That's our plan. Here's what I know, Darren, is I'm a big believer in just trying stuff and just getting out there and doing it. So, for example, with coaching, when I started coaching, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to like give some free coaching away to like 5 people, did that, learned a ton. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to charge this much. And I charged a certain amount. And then I'm like, wow, that really went well. I started then to identify my audience and the type of person that I wanted to coach and the type of coaching I wanted to do. And then I offered a different product to a different group of people. And so every time that I kind of go through an iteration, I get better, I make more money, and I'm happier. And so that's kind of the way and I've been doing that for years. And so that's kind of the way I'm dealing with the cohort is I don't have all the answers. I don't know how we're going to get all these customers. Ideally we're going to get 10 and we're going to go from there. And if we only get 10 every time, that's still freaking amazing. And if we get, I just don't know. I'm just literally, we're just going to grow. Most people try to figure it all out before they start.
Yeah, it's an error. It's not the right way to do it. And what's amazing is when you actually go out and do it and you try it, that's the way to get results. And the results are what lead to learning and optimizing and doing more of what worked and less of what doesn't. But if you never try, then you never have any results. So when you take launching a book, right? If you put a book out there that says, this book's going to teach you how to do this thing, and you've never actually got that result for anybody, no one's going to believe you. So no one's going to buy it. But if you say, hey, I helped scale these 5 businesses to $10 million in revenue, all of a sudden, everybody believes you because you have the results. And so you're kind of using that same approach of like, look, I wrote a book. This is how you can write a book. I launched a cohort. This is how you can launch a cohort. I got these results for the people in the first cohort. Now the cohort's more valuable because I learned from that and made it better. And now it's more valuable. Same thing Ship 30 for 30 did, right? Yep. So it's really important. But the thing that was standing out to me as you were talking, and I've recently just realized this in myself, is that I wasn't ever really trying to grow an audience. I was actively against having a big audience because I thought it was narcissistic and silly and icky and whatever. And that was a limiting belief that I had up until about a year ago when I said, I'm going to write a book, but I know that if I write a book and launch it to, at the time, I think I had 850 followers. And my best guess is that maybe 150 people of those were actual real people and not just some nameless company at years ago that followed me in 2010 and doesn't even exist anymore. My guess was 80% of my audience was bots and old accounts that were inactive. So I'm like, okay, I could either like keep going without building an audience, write the book, put it out there and sell 5 copies, or I could be strategic about it and realize, like you said, I've got to build an audience. And so I did, but over the last year, what I've noticed is that there's the level that I'm operating at and the level that I think is possible. And the standard I'm holding myself to, I think that, if I got 100 followers in a month, that's pretty good. And then I look at people like yourself and others who have grown, 5, 10, 20x in a year, or have grown an audience to 10, 50, 100,000 in a year. I'm like, man, my thinking might just be a little small. And I honestly don't believe that you're working any harder than I am. I don't think it comes down to work ethic. I think it mainly starts with the aspect of like what you think is possible. It's a mindset thing before it's an actual strategy or tactic or hard work thing. I'd love to know your thoughts on that, because I'm working through this right now myself. Is it literally just like, if I said my goal is now 100,000 instead of 10,000, that's going to change my approach. It's going to change my excitement. It's going to change all this stuff. I'd love to just like go deep on that for a second with you.
Yeah, no, that's good. So first of all, mindset's important for sure. I love the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it really shifted my perspective in a lot of areas. But here's what I realized while reading that book is you can't just say like, okay, I want to grow an account to 100,000. It's more of a belief. Like if you believe you can grow an account to 50,000 or 10,000 or 20, whatever the belief is, you can only go up to the level of your belief, not the level of what you say or what your affirmations are. You really got to believe it. And so for me, what really instilled belief in me was I hired coaches from the beginning. So I had another Twitter account. I was like, it was like a doomsday account. I was always, into politics and news pages. I don't know why. I was just addicted, and it was awful. And I wouldn't say it, I don't know how to say it. I wasn't depressed, but I was angry a lot, and it was affecting me personally, and it was affecting my family. So at some point, I don't know how it happened, I happened across Money Twitter, which is just kind of this side of Twitter that talks about investing. It talks about, really just positive changes in your life, talks about systems, it talks about morning routines, things like that. And I found a couple of accounts. And of course, once you find one account, now Twitter starts feeding you other people that are like that. And then all of a sudden you start, following more of them, and it just kind of started to grow. But I was infected, my account was infected with all these other, gross news accounts. So I shut it down. I started Ship 30 for 30. And when I was done with Ship 30 for 30, I started my new account. So I did Ship 30 for 30 in January. That March, I started my new account. And I only followed positive, educational, like cool people that were uplifting. And so what I did was, I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but this guy knows what he's doing, and he's offering coaching. And so I hired him, and he helped me get from 0 to 1,000 fairly quick. And then I went on my own till I got to 5,000, found a guy that was much bigger than me. And like, if he can do it, and he's offering coaching, and it was expensive. Like my threshold for spending money it went from this to this to this. And I just spent $3,000 yesterday for a course, a live course. But it's insane, because he's teaching how to really run and build my course and how to do the cohort. So anyway, all that to say is the coaching was real. What they gave me more than anything. Sure, they taught me how to do this, that, and the other, how to do the systems, how to tweet, how to get the basic foundations built. But my second coach really gave me faith that I could do it. So I grew from 5,000 to, I don't remember, it was over 10,000 in 45 days, like 12,000 in 45 days. It was just like that. And so ever since then, I've been on my own, and I started coaching. And when you're coaching other people, that also helps you grow, because that teaches you things and you're just more aware. But it was really my belief in myself, and belief that it could happen. There's a really good, and I've told you about this, but a really great video that also helped grow my kind of belief in the system. And it's, if you just search, and you can probably put it in the show notes, a link, but it's David Perel and Anthony Pompliano on YouTube. And if you just search those two names, David Perel, Anthony Pompliano, social media, it'll pop up. And he basically just laid out, this is how I built, this empire that this guy has. I don't know, he's over 1.5 million. He's probably at 2 million right now followers on Twitter. And he's got multiple podcasts, multiple newsletters, a free newsletter, a paid newsletter. I can't even imagine. He's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, which is just stupid. So does that make sense? I don't know if that helps.
As a one-man shop, basically. Yeah, no, I think it's him and his wife, and maybe they've got some assistants or some contractors, but it doesn't seem like a huge media business. But what's been amazing, and it really ties back into like the approach, and I think it starts with the mindset. I truly believe that Anthony Pompliano was like, I'm going to build a media empire with myself, where I'm the media and I'm the content. So he started with a newsletter, or he started with a Twitter, and he got it to like a couple 100,000 followers, and then built the newsletter, and then built the paid version, and then added the show, and like got sponsorships and all this stuff. Yeah, he's doing multiple $1 million a year as a kind of a one-man show. So I think the difference between he and I is not the ability, because I could totally do 8 hours a day focusing on content and creating media and stuff, but it doesn't make sense to do that until you have the following. So he focused on building a following. I think he got to 300 or 320,000 followers before he really started monetizing this stuff. which is insane. It's
Yeah.
huge audience. And I'm sitting here going, man, I'd love to get to 10,000. What would that be like? But that's what you're talking about, or what we're talking about, is like the difference in belief or the difference in vision between a 10,000 person follower or a 10,000 following account and 100,000 is night and day. Those are two very different outcomes with two very different sets of results and different realities on the other end. And so it's just been in the last few days and few weeks where I was like, oh, it's actually possible. And it goes back to that idea of results. Like if I wasn't trying, if I wasn't putting stuff out there and seeing if it worked and doing more of what works and less of what doesn't, I'd never believe it was possible to grow 1,000 people in a month or 5,000 people by the end of this year, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You start getting those results and all of a sudden your vision expands because you're like, oh, well, I did that. I could probably do that. Oh, I could do that in 5 years, but what if I tried this? Maybe it's only a year away. It's all mindset stuff. At least the way that I'm thinking about it, it's just, I think
really
my
is
biggest
mindset.
limitation as we're talking about writing and all this stuff is mindset.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is mindset. It's just, I guess what all I want to say is like, it's more than just affirmations. It really is, can you have a different mindset? You talk about growing, by X amount I had a thread, it just went ape shit. I think it got like 14 million impressions. It got I don't even know. It got 150,000 likes and I don't know, a bunch of shares. I don't know, but I don't even remember how much I grew, but I want to say I grew by like 5,000 or 6,000, 7,000 followers in like a 24-hour period. And then yesterday, 2 days ago, on my birthday, I wrote a thread that got 25,000 likes. And I also grew by 5,250 followers. Like, it's just like wildfire. How does that happen? I'll tell you how that happens. It happens by being consistent. So if I weren't writing every day, I write every day. If I weren't writing every day, and if I weren't writing threads regularly, usually about once a week, if you don't write a thread, it's really hard for your thread to go viral. That's what I found out. And so, you really have to just put in the work. And I'll tell you, you want to know where the money is made. And this is really good information for you. Is anybody that's building on social media, this is, in my opinion, this is where the money is made. It is, how long can you endure bad engagement? How long can you endure slow to no growth? Because those days are brutal. I mean, I remember being at 20,000 saying, oh my gosh, is my account dead? Like, what's going on? Everybody else seemed to be doing better than me. And, they're growing faster. And it was just so frustrating. I'm like, is this worth it? At 20,000 followers, I'm thinking this. And so, I'm telling you, you're going to go through it over and over and over again. Right now, because of the thread that I wrote a couple days ago, I feel like I'm on the moon. But in 3 days, I could literally be, in the bottom of the basement, because that's just the way social media is. So if you can endure those hard times, I think that you and be consistent. I would also say find a coach, like find someone who has been where you want to go. When I hired a coach, I was at 5,000, and I think he had like 100,000 followers at the time. No, I remember congratulating. So he had like 75 or 85,000 followers at the time. He crossed 100,000 during our coaching. And so, yeah, hire someone who's where you want to be. And because listen, if you're just going to like be John Wayne about it, and just go out there and just hope for the best, it's going to be really hard. I would take courses, for sure, hire a coach. And that doesn't matter if it's Twitter, social media, or anything you're doing in life. Find someone who's been where you want to be. It is stupid for you to try to figure it out yourself. Now you can, it's just going to take you 10 times longer. One last thing I want to say about monetization is very interesting. So once I started growing this thing, I hadn't hit to 1,000. I thought to myself, when I hit 1,000, I'm going to start doing like affiliate marketing, and I'll just put like an affiliate link into a post and people will buy it and I'll make money that way. And then I hit 1,000. I'm like, I don't have nearly the engagement. I'm getting like 5 or 10 likes. So I'm like, okay, when I hit 5,000, I'm going to do that. I get to 5,000. I'm like, nope. And then 10,000. Nope. I got to wait. I want more engagement, because of what I knew is, and when you put links to follow you, to buy something or anything like that, when you post those links, they just don't get great engagement. And so what I realized was affiliate marketing is not a good way to go. And I have not really monetized my account online. In other words, I don't sell anything. I don't promote anything. I very rarely, when I need a new client, I will post, a quick, at the end of a thread, I'll let people know I'm looking for another client, but that's it. So I'm not selling. The cohort is going to be the first one. And really, like you said, I don't know that I have a lot of clients on Twitter necessarily. I think I'll have some, but it really is just brand awareness. Like, okay, he's proven that he can write. He's proven that he can build an account to 55,000 followers or, whatever. And so I think it's really more about authority and brand awareness and not really selling a lot on Twitter.
Yeah. Gosh, this is, it feels like a very self-serving episode, but generally that means that it's a really valuable episode for the audience. So I'm really grateful for all of those insights, especially on, growing an audience, because getting back to the book, which is something you and I have both done now, we've written and published books, kind of thinking about Twitter first as like where our audience is growing on. And I'm just excited for people to listen to this and go, wow, there's an actual path forward here. You don't have to be an expert in a domain. You don't have to go the traditional approach of like trying to find a publisher and getting permission and landing a book deal, et cetera, et cetera. You can literally do this from scratch. Even if you're starting at 0 followers, George here has proven that you could do it in a year and a half or less, and get enough of a following to launch a book. And I'll even share, like, you don't even need 50,000 followers. I launched my book with like 1,000, and maybe it's 12 or 1,500, somewhere in that range. But like, I didn't have thousands and thousands of people who were clamoring to get my book. I didn't do 10,000 books in the first week. I think to date in 2 months, I've maybe sold $1,500 worth of books. But the opportunities that come when you put yourself out there, you write every day, like we talked about, you're consistent in showing up and giving value to an audience of people, and then you can show the results, all of a sudden you can write a book and you can put it out there and opportunities will pop up.
Yep.
And honestly, at least in my opinion, for now, the opportunities are the bigger upside than like the amount of dollars I could make from being an author. That's not what I'm interested in. But the people I've been able to connect to, the people that take me seriously now, the opportunities that have been generated, I could have never imagined it. And again, that's with a very small following of people. So I say all that to encourage listeners to just listen to what we're saying and like write a book. Take your past writing, or just like write consistently for the next 2-3 months and put it in the context of a book instead of a blog or a newsletter. And you can get a book out there and you'll never know what's going to happen at that point. So thank you for all of your wisdom and insight on this. I'd love to just know, where can people go to follow you? Where can they check out your book? Because I've been enjoying the stories so far. I've been diving in, and it's really well written and it's an engaging read. So I hope people will check it out. But where can people go to find you and to learn more about your book?
Yeah, thank you. Listen, here's the thing. The book is very specific. It's about our lives as Christian missionaries leaving the United States, leaving, the American dream, and coming to Guatemala to serve the underprivileged. That's what the book is about. So it's 50 stories from our time over the last 10 years as Christian missionaries. So if someone is interested in that, absolutely. Starting on July 12th, that's the launch day. You'll be able to just search Do You Love Me is the name of the book. You can search my name, George Sisneros, and it should pop up. Or if you want to download the first 5 stories right now, you can go to doyoulovemebook.com and you can download the first 5 stories. If you do that, then we'll be able to keep in touch with you as to a link to buy the book when it's available. The other thing is, if if you want to contact me, you can find me. The best place to find me is on Twitter. So it's at 1G Sisneros is what my Twitter page is. And I tweet things that your dad should have said but didn't. That's kind of just basically fatherly advice, or just, hard-earned wisdom over the last 56 years. I also want to just tell people that sometime in August, I'm going to be launching a cohort where we help people write their first book within 60 days. So write and publish your first book within 60 days. We have a system. It works. I've done it with a number of people. They've been successful. And so I can't wait to help people write their first book. And so if you're interested in that and you want to get on the wait list, just get a hold of me on Twitter. And again, it's 1G Sisneros on Twitter. So I'm sure you'll leave a link.
Amazing. We'll put links to everything that we talked about today in the show notes. Thank you, George. This has been awesome to catch up and to chat. And I'm really excited for everybody to see what's next. Like, this cohort sounds amazing. The book is awesome. So everybody go check him out. Give him a follow on Twitter. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, one last thing. I was just thinking, I'm sitting here. Is that it? No. So I was just going to say, I am 56 years old.
No, you're good. Man. We're still rolling.
Good. No. I was sitting here thinking about it. I just said my birthday was a couple of days ago. I am 56 years old. If I can do it, if I can build a Twitter page, thank you. You can too. If I can build a Twitter page to 50,000, you can too. I'm 56. Holy smokes. There's no excuse.
Agreed. Great place to end. Thanks, George.
Peace.